1 second. I think we're actually live. There we go. Hello, everybody. Hope you are doing well today. Welcome to Speaker Spotlight. Today, I am joined by Mike Jesowshek. I think I said it right correctly this time. But for those that I have not met before, my name is Lori. I am a business and personal brand success coach and the founder of the Zennial Traveler Coaching and Marketing Agency, where we work with freedom-loving coaches, consultants, and strategists to grow and scale sustainable, location-independent businesses and personal brands through authentic and aligned strategies. And as I said, today I'm joined by Mike, the founder and host of the Small Business Tax Savings Podcast. Mike has spent his entire career as an entrepreneur. He was CFO and co-founded several companies. And throughout that journey, he has experienced all stages of business, from the good to the bad. And hopefully not too much bad, but I'm excited to have you here today, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lori.
And I am just going to preface with everybody, too, that we were just having a little bit of a technical difficulty on my end. My internet went out, so we are hotspotting from my phone right now. So I hope that this is a wonderful experience for everybody, but if not, we will make sure that Mike comes back to you. Okay, so let's hear a little bit about your story before we dive into tax stuff, right? Which is an uncomfortable subject in itself for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, but would love to hear a little bit more, Mike, about you and your story and what kind of brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I really kind of say I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. And so I started actually in the online marketing industry. And so that was at the age of 14. I started this online marketing company. It was kind of a niche area in online marketing where we were doing affiliate marketing and things like that. And so I started my own business in that at the age of 14 and ended up selling that business at the age of 18 for I would call it an exit, but it was like a couple $1,000s. But it was a fun thing that kind of got me to throughout school and throughout high school was kind of my job. And my parents always said, "When are you ever going to get like a real job?" I was like, "This is a real job." But ended up going to college and moved into a different area. Once I sold my business, moved into another area in that affiliate online marketing industry, but just got into different areas of it. And when I was going through that journey, I loved what I was doing. We were doing really well. There was some companies where I was owning it myself. There was another company, the final company I was with, there was 7 partners of us that were all ownership in it. But we were doing really well. But I always said, like, I want to have a backup plan. I want to have the kind of that thing that I have in case this all falls through. Here's where I can go. And I feel like that's, as an entrepreneur, and even to this day, you always have that kind of negative feeling like everything's going to just fall apart one day. And it never happens. But my backup plan was accounting. So I went to school for accounting, got my CPA, and ended up happening is shortly after high school or after college and getting the CPA, that company that we had with 7 partners kind of was all trying to pull the company in different directions. We were all great at certain things that we did, but we tried to pull that company into different directions. And that was the time we said, okay, why don't we just start doing our own things in that area? And so that's where I started an accounting firm and kind of got into this whole accounting side of the business. And when I first started out, I was only doing bookkeeping. I wasn't doing taxes or anything like that, but I was working with other tax accountants. And I would ask them questions like, can I deduct this? Or how do I hire my kids in my business and things like that? And they always would say, well, it depends. And I could just never get a straight answer. It was always just like, it depends. And I'm like, I understand it depends. And I understand that, like, you have to have your specific circumstance, but at the same time, like, there's general information. There's a general concept that applies to 95% of businesses out there where it doesn't depend on that piece. And so that was where I started this tax savings idea in our podcast, because I was just kind of on this journey that's saying other people were experiencing this it depends type answer all the time from accountants. And so it was kind of my mission to help people understand, okay, what tax strategies are out there, what tax strategies are available to businesses of all sizes, because I felt like so many business owners, including myself, were missing out on tax strategies because all we heard was it depends, and then we never dug deeper. We never got any further with it. We just kind of left it at that.
Sounds very familiar, yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of the journey, like been in some kind of business owner role or doing something on my own for ever since high school. It's just
Mhm,
been different ways of it and different kind of scenarios of kind of where that journey has led, and this is where I am
mhm.
today from it.
Love it, love it. And I am going to do just a quick little like plug. We were talking beforehand, and we realized actually though that when we were younger, Mike and I actually did work at the same place, the place where I worked for my first job ever. Mike also worked there, so
That
a
was
lot of.
absolutely crazy. Yeah.
So it is. You never know who you are going to meet in this online world, guys. That was amazing. So okay, let's dig into some tax saving strategies, right? You lead here because I will admit this: taxes, accounting. I was telling you beforehand, like I'm really good with numbers. I think I'm a pretty smart person, but this is like makes my skin crawl, and I know that it's that way for a lot of people. So where do we start?
Yeah, I think the best place to start is just to help people understand what is tax planning even mean. Because
Mm-hmm.
most people, they hear the word tax and they think, okay, that means I gotta fill out my forms, send it to the IRS, send it to the state agencies at year end, and then I just see
Mm-hmm.
my account next year and I'm all done. And we always say that's tax prep, and that's important. That's required by law. But
Mm-hmm.
where our attention really should be is in tax planning, and tax planning is more of what can I implement, what things can I do in my business to make sure that I'm paying the least amount in taxes as legally possible? And that stuff traditionally has to be done throughout the year. So once 1231 hits, so many tax strategies, so many opportunities go out the door. And so that tax planning thing is things that are
Mm-hmm.
happening right now, today. And then tax prep will happen next tax season. That's going to happen in, February, March, or April. So it's just really, as a business owner, just getting this concept and idea of tax planning down and understanding, okay, tax planning, there are some strategies, some things I can implement throughout the year to make sure I'm paying the least amount in taxes legally possible when I go file my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just that mindset shift of, also, when we talk about tax planning, this is available to business owners of all shapes and sizes. Whether you're making $1,000 a year or $1 million a year,
Yeah.
there's tax strategies available. And most of the time, it's the same tax strategy in both of those scenarios. So
That's really
I think it's just
interesting.
that idea of getting business owners to understand this idea of tax planning. And one thing that
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like to talk about when we talk about tax planning is this idea of maximizing deductions. Because I feel
Yes.
like so many people
Let's
have
talk
heard,
about that.
yeah, so many people have heard maximizing deductions, but they don't understand the concept. And I always say that's kind of like a core underlying idea, at least of
Mm-hmm.
tax planning. So when we talk about maximizing deductions, most people are going to think, well, I'm just going to go buy a car that I don't need, or I'm going to go buy a new computer that I don't need because I'm going to get a tax deduction for it. And we're saying,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 that's not what we talk about when we talk about maximizing deductions. Maximizing deductions is saying, hey, there's spending that I'm already doing. How can I turn that into a business expense? And so we kind of look at this as like an after tax and pre tax spending. And so
Okay.
the easiest way to describe this, let's say you're working for somebody else, you're a W 2 employee for somebody.
Okay.
You get gross wages, you get all these taxes taken out, and then whatever's left over, you get in your bank account. And anything that you spend money on is what we call after tax dollars. That money has already been taxed because your employer took it out of there. So
Right.
anything you buy, anything you purchase, after tax dollars. But as a business owner, we have sales or revenue, and then we have all these expenses that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever's left over from that is what we pay taxes on. So we always kind
Yep.
of say is, we look at maximizing deductions, let's look at the spending we're already doing and say, is there a way we can move some of that typical after tax spending into pre tax spending? And so, we talk about this in all different areas, but like meals as
Yeah.
an example. You're meeting with friends or family for a lunch or something like that. Are they a client? Are they a potential client? Are you talking business with them? Can you
Yeah.
find a business purpose for that meeting? If so, you just took a lunch that would traditionally, and most people would think, would be an after-tax spending, but you turned it into pre-tax spending. And another one we talk about a lot is hiring your kids. As a business owner, you can hire your kids in your business, get a business deduction for it, and your kids potentially pay no income taxes. So, we talk to parents and they're
Wow.
saying, well, I pay for kids' basketball camps or travel with friends or they go to a water park with
Mm-hmm.
somebody. And that's all typically going to be after tax spending. But what if your kids did some work for you in your business? You paid them a reasonable rate for the work they do, and then they go and pay for that basketball camp, or they go pay for that water park that they want to go to. Again, this is taking spending you're already doing and moving into a business expense. Now, obviously, with all these things, we have to make sure we're documenting this and following everything to a
Right,
T.
right.
But again, this, with both of those scenarios, we're not spending money that we didn't need to spend. I mean, you
Right.
might be if you're going out to lunch or something like that, but
Right. But that's a whole different conversation, right?
right, this was something that we were going to do anyways. We were going to go to lunch. We were going to send our kids to a basketball camp or a
Right.
water park. We were going to do that anyways, but now we're just shifting some of that money and where we're spending it, finding the business purpose for it. And so that's kind of this, a lot of times when I think of tax plan, that's where I want people to start to get creative and say, okay, every time I'm this card, whether it's a business or personal, is there a business purpose to the spending? Is there some way that I can tie this to my business? And if so, then we might be looking at a business deduction versus a personal deduction. And so that's kind of this mindset shift when we talk about tax planning. That's always kind of a first step, because there's so much missed opportunity there, where most people just hear, I do all my spending and I'm taking advantage of deductions, and I go buy a car at year end, and we're like, no, that doesn't, there's much better opportunities out there. We just have to think a little bit deeper. We have to be a little bit more creative with the way that we're categorizing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm going to use a personal story example here too, though. Like when it comes to like how you're spending your money and thinking about, like you said, am I meeting with a client? Am I doing something? And for me, I'm a digital nomad, and I had asked my accountant, is there any way for me to write off some of this travel, right? To deduct my travel expenses from Wisconsin to Arizona. She's like, well, are you meeting, or are you doing business when you get to Arizona? Like, are you meeting with clients? Are you holding, any seminars there? Is there a reason for you to have to be there? And I think a lot of times we don't think at that level of, well, yeah, actually I am. And she's like, okay, well then, yes, that could be considered a business expense. So yeah, this is amazing. And I think a lot, and this is not, yes, you are in the US and we are talking specifically US tax strategies, but I also want to just say, for those of you that are international, now you have to be aware of your own laws, but these are also ideas that you can bring into your businesses no matter where you're located, and really, really take a look at these things deeper.
Yeah.
So what kind of savings do people see when they do this kind of stuff? Just ballpark, like percentage wise, like what have you seen?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so much, and when we talk about tax savings, we kind of have what we call core tax strategies and advanced tax strategies. And so core tax strategies are going to be strategies that are easy to understand, easy to implement, pretty much can be done at any business size. And so those are going to things like maximizing deductions, hiring your kids, doing a 14-day home renter rule, doing like all these types of planning. In tax savings, I mean, you can cut your tax bill in half. I mean, there's all sorts of ranges. It just depends on how deep you're going. And a lot of times too, some tax strategies cost money. Like if you want to, you can fund a retirement account. That's per se a tax strategy. I mean, you're just moving a taxable event from today to down the road, but that's still some tax savings today. But you might have to put money into a retirement account. And so that's another thing that people want to think about too, is, sometimes when we look at tax planning, there is some out of pocket involved with it. But if we look at maximizing deductions as an example, we're just shifting money from one pocket to a different pocket of where it's coming out of. And that's where a lot of tax planning comes into it. So we have core strategies, which is, again, talking about an S corp is a big one that we do once people hit income of, say, $50,000 or more per year in the US. And then we have advanced tax strategies, and advanced tax strategies are for kind of high income earners. So those making $300,000-$400,000 or more in income. Then we look at advanced tax planning, and sometimes, we can eliminate tax bills significantly utilizing advanced tax planning. So it's always kind of a combination of the two. We always say, let's utilize core tax strategies as much as we possibly can. And if we still have a tax liability left, then let's look into this advanced tax plan and see what's kind of available on the advanced side. So it's hard to give a real number, because, a lot of times we'll come to someone, we'll say, here are things we can do. Let's hire your kids. Let's do this. Let's maximize the deductions. Let's set up an S corporation. And sometimes they'll be like, well, I like all that, but I don't want to do a retirement plan, or, I don't want to set this up. And we're like, that's fine. Like, we don't have to do everything. We just want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's available to them. Because
Yeah,
these things like
absolutely.
hiring your kids, these things like maximizing deductions, they're not just for millionaires. An S corp is not just for a millionaire. These are
Hmm.
for everybody, everyday business owners. And that's where I think there's so much confusion, is that people think I'm too small for this, or they're too hard to understand, or taxes are complicated. These core strategies are,
Yeah.
are really not that bad. And the amount that you can save on them is significant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say, I think a lot of us, who are not accountants and, financial people, like, hear what you're saying too, and they're just like, but, but, but it's so hard, right? It's so hard to do this. So where do they start with this? Like, what is the first step? Somebody who is, newer to these tax strategies, how do they like dip their toes in and start practicing some of this?
Yeah, and we have what I call the journey to tax minimization, and so it's kind of this 5-step journey that I say is, how do you get to ultimate tax minimization or elimination
Mhm.
potentially? And the first step of that is just understanding how taxes work, understanding what tax planning even means. So a lot of what we talked about today, but understanding how taxes work. And I'm not saying that somebody should be an expert in tax. No, but we just need to understand, if I make $100,000 this year and I'm set up as a sole proprietorship, or maybe an LLC or an S corp or whatever
Mhm.
it might be, how am I taxed on that? That's a very simple concept to understand. Again, don't need to be experts, but at least having that core
Mm.
understanding. I think that's the key to start implementing this. So, I would say first step is being willing to learn, or being willing to understand
Yeah.
the basics of what you have. And I think a lot of the problem is that there's really not the resources out there, or their accountants aren't helpful. Because I
Mhm.
faced I was a business owner, not specializing in tax or tax expert at all. I was just
Yeah.
a business owner doing online marketing, and I could not get these answers. I could not get these tax savings. I was facing massive tax bills because I couldn't understand what my accountant was trying to tell me, or they weren't giving me any information. And so being willing to learn is going to help put that above that notch. And so
Mhm.
really with our podcast, and this was kind of my intention or motivation to go out there,
Mhm.
is to help change that. Like, my goal is to help take what may seem like a complex tax strategy, and what most accountants will describe, and when they explain it to you, it will be
Yeah.
pretty complex, but to try to take that into simpler terms and say, okay, let's talk about an S corporation. Let's bring it down to the basics. Let's talk about an S corporation, and then let's take it up. And then when you're ready for those maybe more complex conversations, we can go that route, but we don't have to overcomplicate something that is
Mhm.
relatively easy to understand. And so that's kind of the go with what we do with our podcast and blog, is to just take
Okay.
the complexity of tax and tax strategy and try to boil it down to the simple parts of it for small
Right.
business owners to comprehend. Because that was me. I did that. Like, I'm that person that accountant tells me something, like, I don't know anything. I don't know anything more because I don't understand anything you're saying. And so what I ended up doing on myself as I was going through this with clients and everything else, is I would
Uh-huh.
start to research it, and I would start to understand it, and then try to explain it to somebody else. And that's kind of where that simplicity method
Mhm.
started to
Mhm.
roll through. So I'd just say, where do you start? Just core basic understanding of, how is your business set up? How is it taxed? What does that tax look like? And then from there, now you know how you're taxed. Now we can go into tax plan. Now we can start to understand, okay, what are we really trying to do? Because so many people just wait till tax season, like, accountant says I'm getting a refund, or accountant says I owe this much money. And they're like,
Mhm.
I don't know if they did it right, if they did it wrong. And again, we're not expecting business owners to know those details, but just
Yeah.
understanding, like, if I make $100,000 today, how is that taxed? And that, I
Yeah.
think, is a great starting foundation, because it'll start to
Mhm.
open up your eyes.
It will.
Most people
And
think of
I
tax.
could tell a personal story around this. I'm not going to give amounts, but I, the reason why you want to plan and you want to know these things in advance too is so you know what to expect. So if you're waiting until the end of the year to do these things, um, especially when you're in these growth phases, it can be kind of detrimental if you're not planning. And, I didn't do my tax planning and my tax strategy well, necessarily in my own growth, and had a little bit of a surprise where, I planned what I thought I was going to owe in taxes, but I wasn't maximizing my deductions. I wasn't taking these things and putting them into place. And I ended up with a very large 5-digit tax liability after putting 5 digits away. Again, I'm not using the exact amount, but a little surprise at the end of the year where it's like, oh shit, I should have planned better. So this is why you do these things, guys. So you get to keep the most of your money and you don't have any of those unnecessary surprises come tax time.
Yeah, and you're not alone there too. And we always say, especially like first business owners, it ends up being a snowball effect, because that first year their mind is focused. Like, I don't want to know about taxes, so I'm not going to know about taxes. And at the end of the year, I'm just going to find out what my number is. All of a sudden, boom, there's your number. And they're like, okay, how do I get on a payment plan? So then you're making a payment plan on last year's taxes while you're earning more money and not paying any taxes into this year. So you got last year's taxes paid off, but then you got the next year's tax bill. And you're like, well, I need a payment plan. And so we always kind of say it's that snowball effect that as a new business owner, you need to just get on top of it to begin with, put that cash away, and then you avoid kind of that downward spiral.
Yeah, and put the right amount of cash away too.
There you go.
Because I was definitely doing it right, but that growth from like year 1 into year 2 is just kind of like, oh yeah. So tax planning strategies, guys, I know that they're not sexy, they're not necessarily fun, but listen to Mike, not me, when it comes to taxes. That's awesome. That's awesome. So what kind of, I know you have, the podcast, of course, do you have other resources available to people that are maybe starting out that could help them to start this tax planning themselves?
Yeah, we have our small business tax savings podcast, which we do weekly episodes on. Been doing that for about 4 years. So you can easily go back, even different topics that come up, like, hey, I want to buy a vehicle. How does this work? Like, there's something out there for that. But along with every podcast episode, we have a blog post. And that blog post is a very kind of visual and easy to understand summary of what we talked about on the podcast. So if you're a reader, check out the blog. If you're a listener, check out the podcast. In this is all kind of that information that kind of I feel answers those questions that so many people have. And all of our podcasts, all of our blogs are based off of a question. What is a home office? Or how do I hire my kids in my business? Because those are the questions that people were asking me for. And I'm like, okay, let's answer that directly. So we have our podcast and blog. And then we also have what we call our tax minimization program. Those are just for those people that want to take that step further, modules and downloads and monthly private webinars and unlimited access to our team for questions like that. That's kind of that next step. You say, yep, I got that corner standing. Now I want to take it to that next level. That's kind of our next process in there.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm going to pop some contact information up here for you. So if you want to connect with you, this is your Instagram handle, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Super easy, guys. Like, can't get this one wrong. Tax savings. That is a really good handle. How early did you have to gather that one? I would imagine that one was in demand for other accountants.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I feel like it wasn't that long ago, but that does seem. Now you're second guessing me. I'm like, I'm gonna go check my Instagram handle, make sure it's right. But that's it. I know that's it.
So that's a good handle, guys. So at Tax Savings on Instagram. If you want access to any of those resources that Mike mentioned, if you want to, get his podcast, what is the name of the podcast again?
Small Business Tax Savings Podcast.
Okay. You can also Google that, but you should reach out to Mike, connect with him. And again, guys, this isn't, yes, he is a CPA in the United States. So for our US based entrepreneurs, or US, not necessarily based, because you may be a digital nomad, but paying taxes in the US, Mike can definitely help you, but the strategies that he's teaching can definitely carry over to our Canadians and Australians and UK all of you, you'll be able to find something to resonate with here. So this has been fantastic and very eye-opening and helpful, Mike. Thank you so much. Any last words of wisdom that you want to give people?
Yeah, just this concept of, if you have never done tax planning before or understood what tax planning was, just take a small step forward. Listen to a podcast, read something online, do something where you're just taking that small step forward. Because I just want to reiterate this again: is that tax planning is for people making $1,000 a year to $1 million and more a year. And wherever you are in that journey, wherever you are in that income level, there's tax planning, there's strategies available to you. And they're not hard to understand. They're available for you as long as you put some time in to help understand them. So take that step, whether it's today or tomorrow. Take that step to start paying less in taxes, because you're just making a donation to the government by paying taxes, where some of this money can stick in your own pocket.
Absolutely. And not, we don't love our government, but we love ourselves more. So keep your money, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And for all of you who are watching, if you are ready to create sustainable strategy for your businesses, not tax strategy, business strategy, and a steady flow of consistent clients so you can have a business that you love that also supports the remote-based freedom lifestyle you desire. Stop going at it alone. Reach out. Let's chat about how we can help get you there faster with more confidence, less lazy sales, and in a way that is authentically you. So go ahead, send myself or any members of my team a message. Would love to chat with you. And awesome. I'm not sure there's someone, sorry, I don't have the name, but someone just followed the podcast and Instagram. So good. I know I did warn you, Mike, this is one of those topics where people are pretty quiet during the live because I think they're just absorbing all the information that you have to share. So they're listening. And guys, please go ahead and reach out to Mike with any questions that you have. Connect with him, watch the podcast, because this is going to be huge for you as you grow your business. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. So thank you, Mike. Everybody, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you back here next week.
Thanks for having me, Lori.